We are back with our budget conversations with Steve Bland and his team, the Metro Transit Authority, MTA. What I'd like to do is take a minute to introduce the electeds who are here. We have Councilmember Bill Pridemore, who's in the back, who is the budget chair for the Metro Council process. We have Councilman Larry Hager, Councilman Russ Pulley, Councilmember Tanaka Vercher, and I'm going to turn this to Talia. She's going to kick us off, turn it back to you, and if you would introduce the folks that you brought with you, that'd be great too.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. The Metro Transit Authority provides public transportation to our community and visitors. They have a current subsidy from Metro of $40.1 million, and they have one employee.
Wow.
I'll let Mr. Bland explain that to you when I hand it off to him. And they have an improvement request for FY17 of $4.2 million. With that, I'll kick it back to you, Mr. Bland.
Great. Thank you, Talia.
That one employee you might want to.
Thank you, Mayor Barry and Rich. Joining me today is Marion Ott, Chair of the Metro Transit Authority Board. Ed Oliphant at the table, our Chief Financial Officer. We also have in the audience Patricia Harris-Moorhead, our Marketing Communications Director, Eric Beyer, our Community Relations Director, and Shelley McElhaney, who's our Controller. I'll just give you a quick introduction, then I know you'll want to kick into the actual specific requests. First of all, just to recap, during the past year, the MTA has been pretty visible on a number of issues as transportation and mass transit has kind of moved to the forefront of discussion in Nashville. So most visibly, we initiated the N-Motion strategic planning process, and the intent was to keep the board's promise to make sure that future planning of transit systems and improvements was fully transparent and fully engaging. And to date, as of today, we've engaged over 14,500 folks on our current scenarios that are out there. We've got, as of an hour ago, 8,400 comments in that we're sifting through. So in that process, I think
Well, can you just do, because we have people watching at home, give a quick plug for this, because I try to plug it everywhere I go.
Please go to nmotion2016.org. You can see more information, more reports, more maps than you can shake a stick at, and we really encourage people to complete the survey instrument that's out there now, and even more so to give us their comments. A number of public hearings or meetings going on, and we've been getting great feedback really on all sides of the issue.
Good.
Thank you. On the operations front, during the most recent year, we've converted the Music City Circuit, which now provides over 1,000 daily trips, to all-electric, zero-emissions vehicles, super quiet, and they've been extremely well received by the downtown community.
What kind of ridership do you get on that?
About 1,000 a day, a little over 1,000 a day, and that's picking up. And it obviously varies. When we have big events downtown, it picks up some. Bus Rapid Transit Light, which is a very popular product offering that historically was in the Gallatin and Murfreesboro corridor, was extended to Charlotte this past year, and as of Sunday will begin in the Nolensville corridor. So we're anxious to have that. And in the passenger amenities front, we are more than halfway through the installation of the Mayor's 100 Shelter program. So really by the end of this fiscal year, within a 2-year period, we will have more than doubled the passenger waiting shelters in the system. We're going to defer a lot of our discussion on future initiatives and partnerships to the PIP process next week. But I just wanted to highlight a couple of the ongoing partnerships that are sort of part of routine business now. The STRIDE Student Pass program with Metro Nashville Public Schools now amounts to over 1 million trips annually. 1 million of our students are riding. They're not just riding to school. We found that summer ridership has held up considerably well, so folks are using it for all types of purposes. And a really important partnership, I'm sorry that Keith had to leave because he was central to this, is the partnership we now have with Metro Public Works on the Murfreesboro Road signal project and pedestrian amenities with transit priority. And then finally, with respect to current year or prior year activities, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank you for helping us officially kick off the Music City Transit Tracker last week. The long-awaited and oft talked about real-time app that is the kind of a cornerstone of our overall automatic vehicle location system, and we'll continue to roll out enhancements and amenities associated with that, through the course of the upcoming year. So, with that, if you would like to kick into the specific budget, we'd be happy to do that.
I did also want to just, because you're talking about partnerships, I did just also want to give you a shout out for taking the time a couple weeks ago to sit around the table with the school board and school facilities to come up with a plan so that we now have a plan that involves getting kids to school if there is a snow event and starting on a 2-hour delay, like a lot of the surrounding counties. And I know that you were instrumental in making sure that we can accommodate those kids, but instead of having a whole day go without our kids being in school, I really appreciated that. So thank you.
To be frank, we need the ridership.
It's all right. It's all good.
We don't want them to lose a day.
That's right. There you go. So you got a $4.2 million request that is largely FTEs, but you don't have any FTEs. So let's talk about that.
So the structure, the simplest way it was explained to me when I started by our attorney was because of federal labor law, we fall under for the federal transportation funding. If our bargaining unit employees were employees of the authority, we'd either have to violate federal law or state law.
Okay.
So the way the MTA operates is it's a public authority. I am the sole public employee. And then we actually operate through service through a nonprofit subsidiary called Davidson Transit Organization, Inc., that is the employer of record for 676 other folks who actually do the work.
And that was going to be my question. How many full-time employees work for MTA? 676?
676,
Okay.
correct. And obviously, the overwhelming majority of those are bus operators in that type of position.
Right.
Mechanics is another
Right.
big category, but, certainly the dominant category is operators.
So how will this budget request, if I'm somebody viewing from home and you ask for $4.2 million with this kind of increase in FTEs, what's that going to give me?
Sure. Well, in this case, first of all, we have a line item identified as salary enhancements. That's the bulk of that. A little bit misleading in the labeling. About $701,000 of that represents wages for new positions, a kind of blended. The tough thing is where we mix our regular budget with our PIP budget. So we're focusing our service enhancement proposals in the PIP budget.
Okay.
But those also require some level of positions to support. So for instance, if you're going to start more frequent service, you need more operators to support that, or later service, but then you also need operations supervision, or you need the maintenance personnel. So that's what's tended to blend in here. Of that $3,070,600 in salary enhancements, about $701,000 really falls into the service enhancement category.
Okay.
Approximately $1,167,300 falls into fringe benefits that goes in line with increases in health insurance coverage. It's associated benefits like FICA, workers' compensation, that sort of follow wage levels. So again, some of it related, a large part of it related to current staff, some of it related to those incremental positions needed for service enhancements. Another piece is the actual wage increases. We're budgeting for a 2% increase in average compensation to employees. That includes a 2% negotiated increase with our bargaining unit, which is Amalgamated Transit Union Local 1235. Excuse me. And then finally, there are, so of the 5 new FTEs in that salary enhancement piece, 2 of those are supervisory positions to support service enhancements. So they would be considered part of overhead, but they are actually supporting particularly expanded service hours if that's funded. The other 3 positions are administrative in nature, and they include administrative support to, I was listening intently to Keith's presentation, because one's an administrative position to support our IT folks. Now with all of the advanced technical equipment and the vehicle location systems and new fare systems, we frankly have technical folks. We don't have the administrative support folks. The other is in our human resources area. Over the past 5-6 years, we've increased the overall operating employment level by almost 50%. We really haven't increased the admin level to support human resources. In that period of time, we've also gone from a 1-facility operation to a 2-facility operation. So the challenge is in benefits administration and handling grievances and normal HR compliance ratios. Frankly, we fall behind.
Do you all have any relationship back to Metro HR, or you all stand alone?
We coordinate, but we're standalone on the benefits admin and what.
How many open positions do you have at the moment?
How many open positions,
you know?
probably including operators, it would be about 35 or 40. Operator and maintenance being the dominant categories.
Got it. Okay.
Did I miss anything?
Well,
Talia.
Okay. Keep going.
Okay. The second item we had was for fleet reliability and longevity, which includes a total of 1,163,508 FTEs. The 8 FTEs are all maintenance technicians. Mechanics would be the old word to use. Frankly, they're more than that anymore. They use more laptops than they do wrenches.
Sure.
One of the things we've done was to do an industry benchmarking on maintenance performance. Over the past 5 years, again, we have gone to a dual facility environment. We've expanded the size of the fleet. We've also increased the complexity of the fleet with the diesel electric hybrid buses, the full electric vehicles, and then some of the new amenities like satellite communication, onboard video surveillance. And when we had the outside benchmarking folks come in and look, they essentially said we're understaffed in some of those key categories to do adequate maintenance. And a lot of our maintenance, frankly, right now is sort of a triage thing. We need to get ahead of it. We've actually seen somewhat of a downturn in fleet reliability over the last year and a half, 2 years, and that's a slippery slope. If we don't get in front of it, it becomes even more difficult as the fleet ages. So the real intent of this particular line item is both to improve the reliability of the current fleet and to be able to extend its life.
Okay.
Third item is service improvements, which we would, unless you choose otherwise, we'll defer to next week's
Sure, that's fine.
scenario. 4 general administrative really are kind of fallout items that are associated with increasing service levels. So it's things like liability insurance premiums,
Right.
which tend to be based on miles operated, service hour expended. Some of that is training expense we anticipate in the maintenance program as we're bringing on new employees. Item number 5 actually requires a shout out to Metro government. Fuel savings is a good news item. This year we expect to reduce expenses by over $1 million. That's a combination of the fuel hedging program that we partner in with Metro, City of Franklin. Also involved in that is obviously lower general fuel market prices. And as we get new technology, particularly the full electric and the hybrid electric buses, we've seen significantly improved fuel economy on the overall fleet. Moving over to anticipated revenues, we do have a note of concern in that we, after hitting the modern-day peak in ridership for Nashville in 2014, we've seen about a 3.5% decline in ridership to date. It's actually reflecting somewhat of a national trend. As an example, we looked at some comparative data. Orlando's down about 3.2%. Louisville's down about 5.75%. Kansas City's down about 5.5%. And the reasons vary by market, but a lot can be attributed to lower fuel prices. Frankly, as an industry, we're still assessing the Uber-Lyft impact on ridership, because that certainly has some impact, and we'll cover that just as a teaser. We'll cover a lot more of that on Monday in particular. So it's an issue of concern, one that we're poking into. The one locally, the good news and the bad news. On the bad news side, one of the things that's affected ridership, particularly on our commuter routes, is we've had some upheaval in our park and ride locations. Most of our park and rides are what I would refer to as charity lots. Property owners, just frankly, through the goodness of their hearts, say, yeah, you can have people park there and take the bus. And as you would expect in a city that's growing this rapidly, occasionally those properties then need to be consumed for development. And whenever we get chased from a lot, there's obviously some turnover in ridership as people lose that pattern. And one in particular where we lost significant ridership was a lot we had up in the Rivergate area that led to some decline. Also on the revenue side, you saw a decrease in other non-transportation revenues of $59,000. I would actually characterize this as probably a good news item. This reflects our expectation, our budgeting, that the Clement Landport facility will be, removed from our books and essentially disposed of as surplus property. And currently, we do generate about that amount of revenue in parking revenues.
So where are we on the assessment on that?
Appraisal should be back within the next couple weeks. So the appraiser's
Is that
working
2
on it
weeks?
as we speak. I think his deadline is
couple,
actually
2
the end of
weeks.
April.
Okay, I'm just checking.
Yeah, so he may be moving, hopefully moving faster than that.
Okay,
And
good.
the tricky part of that one is just assessing what can you do with that site, so establishing what the best market
Okay.
practice is.
All right. Diane?
I have a general question. If you were to talk to a citizen, just somebody that just walked up to you, what do you think they would say about their biggest, what area do you think they would bring up to you as the issue you need to deal with? Is it the buses are breaking down and I can't get to work on time? Or is it the frequency that you're not running at the right hours? Or is it I got to go all the way downtown before I can cross over?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got neighbors, and I can tell you what they would say. I'm just wondering what you hear.
After 14,300 engagements today.
What are they saying?
The dominant ones we hear are, and it really depends on the rider market, the dominant ones we hear are service hours, need to run earlier, need to run later, particularly as Nashville's becoming a 24-hour city and a significant piece of our ridership or hospitality industry employees. Frequency is always one that people mention. Generally the rule of thumb in transit is if I don't need to carry a schedule, I'll give it, if it's simple, I know where to get it, and I don't need to carry a schedule, I'm more likely to use it. And to be honest, one that we're serving on the group that's overseeing or advising Public Works on the sidewalk plan is, a big part of it is when we were going through the public engagement, the issue of safety came up quite a bit.
Safety, yeah.
And one of the things that they highlighted, it wasn't they felt unsafe on the bus, it was how do we get to the bus stops? Whether that's sidewalks or it's crossing streets like Nolensville Pike. So those are, I think, some of the things that are, really at play. Really to kind of put a finer point on the reliability, while we're concerned with the numbers, on an average month, we're completing 98.82% of all trips. So the trend is of concern. In real numbers, it doesn't break down,
I'd like to move it back to the budget request, which is we want to keep it that way. So we know that we're understaffed in maintenance, so we want to get it fully staffed so that we can make sure that as the buses age, we're not facing reliability problems with them.
And frankly, that as a triage approach happens, we're always going to make sure brakes work, and we're always going to make sure safety equipment works. So frankly, the things that are going to be most prone are what I would call the amenity pieces.
Sure.
And those, frankly, are very important to customers.
And then finally, your assumptions around state contributions to your budget is
We're assuming
flat.
flat.
That's your working assumption.
That's our working assumption.
No decrease and no increase.
Correct.
Okay.
The state is, TDOT is completing a statewide transit needs assessment as part of their long-range planning. And interestingly enough, it kind of mirrors our scenario process with what I'll call a status quo, a normal increase in service, and then an aspirational increase in service.
Rich?
RTA?
RTA, we're proposing no increase in either the operating or the capital budget, and that came through some really hard work and good work by the RTA Board of Directors last year. There was conservative budgeting done around a particular federal funding source, so we budgeted last year assuming a worst-case scenario. We were actually successful in getting renewal on a lot of those funds, so as a result, none of the municipal contributions are projected to increase in the upcoming year.
And while we talked about the subsidy going up 4 million, proposed going to 4 million, we don't talk about capital. So there's a large capital request.
Yeah.
I want to just touch on.
Yeah, let's do that.
That's 30 million.
Right. Two of them, the expansion buses for increased frequency and fare collection, we're going to speak about fairly extensively in the PIP presentations next week. Replacement buses, which is by far the largest item, is the replacement of our standard 40-foot transit coaches in the fleet, and that anticipates the replacement of 20 40-foot transit coaches that have reached their useful life and are kind of on the tail end, as Marion indicates. They become less reliable, more expensive to maintain. 2.63 million are essentially the assorted capital projects that are matching available state and federal funds for miscellaneous things, anything from shop equipment to shelters to, kind of you name it, the miscellaneous capital that you see around the system.
I'm good.
Yeah, me too. Anything else? No, I think we're good. Thank you so much.
Thank you very
and
much.
thank
We
you again
appreciate
for
your call.
the excitement around the process that you're using. I think it's great that you're engaging the community. I do really believe that you've got to put those scenarios out there, let folks say what they want. They're ultimately going to be the users, so let's find out what they'll use.
And they are saying things, so.
Exactly.
Thank you
We
all very
appreciate y'all.
much.
Thank you so much.